the secrets of the universe. What lies hidden in the belly of the universe, beyond the mouths of moons, the round ears of the spheres, and the silver eyes of the endless, unblinking stars? Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in to the 82nd show in my ongoing weekly series, coming to you live from the sometimes mysterious coast of New England, from the southern shores of Rhode Island. This is your poet and poetorialist Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more poetically, more expressively, more soulfully. Last week we attended to listening more finely and hearing more greatly, our inner selves, inner voice, others, and the world's clear to subtle sounds, messages, and silences, nature's not least. Appreciating the many gifts that flow from these finer receivings, attunings, we can all come to if and when we choose. This week we head into the unknown, from the hidden to the foreign, to the curious, mysterious, and nameless, into realms of the unfamiliar, the uncertain, the unexplored, all through a portal of cultural commentary, poetry, inquiry, and shared discovery. So, let's begin. And I thought we'd begin with a poem by the philosopher-poet John O'Donohue, the Irishman. I've spoken of it at other times, and speaking of tonight, For the Unknown Self. It's a poem, and maybe it's also a blessing. So much of what delights and troubles you happens on a surface you take for ground. Your mind thinks your life alone. Your eyes consider air your nearest neighbor. Yet it seems that a little below your heart, there houses in you an unknown self who prefers the patterns of the dark and is not persuaded by the eye's affection or caught by the flash of thought. It is a self that enjoys contemplative patience with all your unfolding expression, is never drawn to break into light, though you entangle yourself in unworthiness and misjudge what you do and who you are. It presides within you like an evening freedom that will often see you enchanted by twilight without ever recognizing the falling night. It resembles the under-earth of your visible life. All you do and say and think is foster deep in its opaque and prevenient clay. It dwells in a strange yet rhythmic ease that is not ruffled by disappointment. It presides in a deeper current of time, free from the force of cause and sequence that otherwise shapes your life. Were it to break forth into day, its dark light might quench your mind, for it knows how your primeval heart sisters every cell of your life to all your known mind would avoid. Thus it knows to dwell in you gently, offering you only discreet glimpses of how you construct your life. At times, it will lead you strangely, magnetized by some resonance that ambushes your vigilance. It works most resolutely at night as the poet who draws your dreams, creating for you many secret doors decorated with pictures of your hunger. It has the dignity of the angelic that knows you to your roots, always awaiting your deeper befriending to take you beyond the threshold of want, where all your diverse strainings can come to wholesome ease. Thank you, John O'Donohue. That's from his collection, To Bless the Space Between Us. This is from Exploring Your Mind. The fear of the unknown is quite common. Fear of the unknown is one of the most basic and useful human emotions. It's allowed us to face dangerous situations and to escape from them, facilitating our survival throughout the history of the world. You may not be aware of it, but people learn valuable information after experiencing a threatening situation. People remember what endangered them and how they overcame it. On the other hand, some fears are related to a lack of information. This is from Gabrielle Ram, R-A-A-M, and Consciousness Way. When people get together, there are those that come out with questions. Usually they are less respected than those that always supply the answers. They are looked at as being on a higher status. So when in company, we learn not to come out with questions. We swallow them, prefer to pull out answers. And so a general conversation becomes an exchange of answers with hardly any questions at all. It is a competition in which the smartest answer wins. We go out of university armed with millions of answers to questions that never crossed our mind. So the problem is never a shortage in answers. We have too much. The problem is in the many questions we never ask and never dream to ask. Curiosity, thirst to know, hunger to understand, confusion, uncertainty, not knowing are not burning in us. We are too full with the, quote, liquid of too many unnecessary answers, liquid which shuts down the burning of the little questions which are still burning on low fire inside. And here's the Nobel Polish poet Wisława Szymborska. Any knowledge that doesn't lead to new questions quickly dies out. It fails to maintain the temperature required for sustaining life. In the most extreme cases well known from ancient and modern history, it even poses a lethal threat to society. This is why I value that little phrase, quote, I don't know, so highly. It's small, but it flies on mighty wings. It expands our lives to include the spaces within us as well as those outer expanses in which our tiny earth hangs, suspended. In daily speech, we don't stop to consider every word. We all use phrases like, quote, the ordinary world, quote, ordinary life, quote, the ordinary course of events. But in the language of poetry, where every word is weighed, nothing is usual or normal. Not a single stone and not a single cloud above it. Not a single day and not a single night after it. And above all, not a single existence, not anyone's existence in this world. Well, here's her poem, Utopia. Island, where all becomes clear. Solid ground beneath your feet. The only roads are those that offer access. Bushes bend beneath the weight of proofs. The tree of valid supposition grows here with branches disentangled since time immemorial. The tree of understanding, dazzlingly straight and simple, sprouts by the spring called Now I Get It. The thicker the woods, the vaster the vista, the valley of obviously. If any doubts arise, the wind dispels them instantly. Echoes stir unsummoned and eagerly explain all the secrets of the worlds. On the right, a cave where meaning lies. On the left, the lake of deep conviction. Truth breaks from the bottom and bobs to the surface. Unshakable confidence towers over the valley. Its peak offers an excellent view of the essence of things. For all its charms, the island is uninhabited, and the faint footprints scattered on its beaches turn without exception to the sea. As if all you can do here is leave and plunge, never to return into the depths, into unfathomable life. Thank you, Wisława Szymborska. And here's the contemplative Craig Hamilton. Dare to let go of your mind, the mature innocence of living in the unknown. It's from one of his posts, October 2020. When I'm talking about letting go of the mind, I'm really talking about letting go of this deep and unbroken attachment to it. We're letting go of our identification with the mind. What we discover through meditation or through any process of real awakening is that we are not our thoughts. We can pay attention to them or even be interested in them, but we are not mistakenly believing that we are them. Relating to our minds in this way requires us to let go of the need to know and embrace the unknown. We have to let go of our need for certainty. We have to stop trying to control our minds. Living in the unknown can be scary, but there's a very beautiful and mysterious dimension to it. When you're not attached to your mind or clinging onto it or trying to control it, you find that your mind starts to function in a completely different way. A mysterious creative process starts to emerge within you. You start to have insights that seem to come from nowhere. You find a kind of spontaneous wisdom coming from your lips that you didn't invent. It's not you that's forming the wisdom. It's coming from somewhere mysterious that you can't even know. When you stop trying to control your mind, you start to function in a more natural, fluid way. Life just flows. You find this confidence to walk into difficult, high-stakes situations completely open, innocent, and empty-handed. You begin to trust that what you need to know will show up, and that the energy you need to meet the challenge will arise. Thank you, Craig Hamilton. Very interesting fellow, too. You might want to dip into some of what he's about. Which brought me to a poem of mine called The Spirit Board, about my life as a poet, and some of the essence and certainly the mystery of that. Sometimes writing a poem feels like a Ouija at work, when the mind and the moment are entrancingly still, and a heart-shaped hand, my hand, floats a pen over the page to let my spirit speak. In sudden words, ascending lines, say whatever it wants to say, needs to say, in surprising and mysterious ways, ways I can't predict, don't control. Just let it move. From Sounds True, the poet-philosopher David White, on being at the frontier of your identity. It's from an interview with Tammy Simon, who's the founder of Sounds True. There's so many wonderful and illuminating and inspiring conversations at that place. But I thought this was especially fitting for us to talk about and gather into what I sourced for us. She said, David and I spoke about exile as a core human competency, the conversational nature of reality, vulnerability as enhanced perception, and the invisible support that surrounds us. So in that conversation, he said one of the difficulties of this conversational identity is that you have to learn to live with the unknown in a way, just as you have to learn to live with another person or with other persons in human social existence. The interesting thing is that that unknown has a life of its own, but also in a kind of ancient, mystical, Meister Eckhartian way. It is given life by the way that you actually pay attention to it. One of the poems that I work with is called Start Close In, which is about finding this ground of your own. You know, start close in, don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first one, close in, the step you don't want to take. Start with the ground that you know, the pale ground beneath your feet, your own way to begin the conversation. You're learning how to find your own place. So we'll come back to a bit of David White on that later, but in one of his poems. I was then also called to mind of the artist George O'Keeffe and her point of view. I feel that a real living form is the result of the individual's effort to create the living thing out of the adventure of his spirit or her spirit into the unknown, where it has experienced something, felt something it is not understood. And from that experience comes the desire to make the unknown known. Making your unknown known is the important thing. And keeping the unknown always beyond you, catching, crystallizing your simpler, clearer version of life, only to see it turn stale compared to what you vaguely feel ahead, that you must always keep working to grasp. The form must take care of itself if you can keep your vision clear. Michael Mead, from one of his postings called On the Hidden Message. It's from the Living Myth podcast number 252. He's an applied mythologist, as some of you may know, and he said this there: when the heavy winds of change blow, what is underneath the surface of life becomes revealed. What has been mostly forgotten is that the inner message and defining pattern of our souls must be uncovered if we are to become genuine individuals. Individual means someone undivided on the inside and awakened to some degree to a sense of meaning and purpose in life. Unless we can find ways of being undivided on the inside, there's no way for a collective society to find a sense of unity in the outside world. Each of us has the most to give and can contribute most meaningfully when we become who we already are at the core of our lives. That is the inside story and the hidden message that has been etched into the soul of humanity and needs to be rediscovered and brought back into current imagination and understanding. Thank you, Michael Mead. So I'm adding to that, what might your own hidden messages be, listeners? Ones waiting to be unearthed and embodied. Catharsis to Apotheosis is a piece I composed back in 2016 on the sort of tide, I guess, of big life changes and tectonic feelings around those and facing newly raised unknowns. Catharsis to Apotheosis. When the fever spike of high emotions, the marlin spike of high tensions, the mystifying questions are released, unraveled, there's titanic relief. You return to a steady-as-you-go self, but your heart, even the beats and the feelings in your bones, while there, are no longer the same, have clearly reset in some tectonic way to another kind of resonance. A sureness, yes, but also a curious lighterness. And your mind's eye, soul's eye, sees now, spies now, a before unseen opening in the sky it can rise to, go through, grow through, in a humbly, humanly, godly way. The Songlines of the Soul is a poem from the Yucatan, which was a fertile place for me to muse and create every winter for many years. And it was inspired by the Australian Aboriginal culture and their notion of songlines, which some of you may know of. The songlines of the soul. What are the songlines of the soul that track into the vast and mysterious outback we call the unknown? Metaphysicians, soul Sherpas, can guide you only so far. The rest of the way, you must travel alone with a divining rod of your own making that will point you to the places where your soul streams from sweet water springs, where you can quench your other cosmic thirst for wholeness, completion, and connection to everything in the universe. I sometimes like to give us questions to muse on, ponder, and this happens to come from Soul Matters, questions to walk with. It's a list of questions, they say, to open the mind's gateway to reveal the wisdom that is right below the surface of our ordinary, everyday lives. Well, here are some of them. There's more than these, but I'll give you these. Are your commitments deep and big enough to put you in danger? Who in your life needs their vulnerability affirmed? Who near you is taking a risk and needs reminding that others are watching with admiration and awe? Have you fallen into more, quote, vanilla pudding than you thought you would? How's, quote, the middle feeling to you these days? How might the struggle of yours change if you took the risk of sitting down and listening rather than the risk of standing up and speaking? Winston Churchill said, courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. What about the risks of letting go? What about the boldness of taking a pass? Sometimes deciding to walk away from the cliff is as courageous and bold as jumping off. Are you scared? And if so, why aren't you telling someone? When was the last time you referred to life using the phrase, quote, the thrill of it all? Where is there room this month to make life a bit more thrilling? Are you putting up with recklessness? Kurt Vonnegut said, don't be reckless with other people's hearts and don't put up with people who are reckless with yours. And what's your question? What is life asking from you? like that. Thank you. Thank you to them for that. Well, I often also muse, as you may too, on the mysteries of the heavens, the planets, and not least the moon. This is called So Blue, an ode to the moon. Ethereally blue, as it phosphoruses on the blankets of snow, duvetly draping the shrubs and statues in the unflowered garden, as it casts its curious spell of melancholy color on the clouds and overcoated trees. This moon, this unearthly, beautiful blue moon. And here's one on witnessing the great American solar eclipse. But a sip of water before. Overshadowing. Long, long past a last great darkness, falling over the breadth of the country, occulting over declarers of independence, over everything animate, inanimate, proximate, over every one under the sun. Now another total solar wonder, this time preceded by a sacred circling of hawks above the highest pine, by double-winged diadems of black and chalk-blue dragonflies landing on outspread branches and blankets, by a knowing, slow-rising musing of birds and crickets above the surface, turtles and breathing fish below, by a harmonizing, vitalizing breeze stirring every leaf, reed, and petal, by seated and standing figures around the pond, quietly beholding the hiding and seeking sun, the syzygy, all the supernaturality. Overshadowing. What's the mood of the universe? The one glimmering right now in tiaras of stars across these night skies. The one swirling right now in fantasias of foam beneath that waterfall. The one singing right now in the jubilant mouths of myriad birds. The one pulsing with heart through the bright arteries of your body. Consider, dear listeners, consider all the marvels and mysteries abounding. And what about the unseen realms we can feel, we can sense around us, those intangible places, whether the spirit world or a given spirit, perhaps? I'm curious about what your experiences might be. Here's one of mine. What is this presence? It was from a late night, wee hours on East Pond Road above Lake Temarascata, Noblesboro, Maine. October 2018. What is this presence? Close around me in the night darkness, in the deep stillness, enfolding me like a lover with such tenderness, like a mother with such benevolence. Is it the presence of the land and water I lie above? Is it a soft, silent angel revealing its protecting wings? Or my own spirit, my anima, holding me so transcendently and showing me I'm really a body inside a breathing soul? I came back to two poems about mysterious letters that came. Two different poets, Mark Strand and David White. Mark Strand's first is the mysterious arrival of an unusual letter. It had been a long day at the office and a long ride back to the small apartment where I lived. When I got there, I flicked on the light and saw on the table an envelope with my name on it. Where was the clock? Where was the calendar? The handwriting was my father's, but he had been dead for 40 years. As one might, I began to think that maybe, just maybe, he was alive, living a secret life somewhere nearby. How else to explain the envelope? To steady myself, I sat down, opened it, and pulled out the letter. Dear son was the way it began. Dear son, and then nothing. Well, as interesting as that is, how about bookending it or pairing it with this one of David Whyte's, which everly fascinates me. Imagine such an experience, such an imagining as that, the earlier one and this one. Farewell letter. She wrote me a letter after her death, and I remember a kind of happy light as I sat by the rose tree on her old bench by the back door, so surprised to receive it, wondering what she would say, looking up before I could open it and laughing to myself in silent expectation. Dear son, it is time for me to leave you. The words you are used to hearing are no longer mine to give. You can only hear those words of motherly affection now from your own mouth, and only for those who stand motherless before you. As for me, I must forsake adulthood and be bound gladly to a new childhood. You must understand this apprenticeship demands of me an elemental innocence from everything I've ever held in my hands. I know your generous soul is well able to let me go. You will in the end be happy to know my God was true, and that after so many years of loving you so long, I find myself in the wide, infinite mercy of being mothered myself. P.S. All of your intuitions were true. Thank you, David Whyte, for that. Beautiful. The Night Visitor is a poem that speaks to the unknown. It's from a show of mine, a show of theater on paper, Behind the Curtain. And here in a fantasy form, but we could also say each new engagement with another, yet known or fully known to us, is an entrance into mysterious territory. The Night Visitor. Candelabra and body glow into the bedchamber. Answer the invitation to visit this night beneath the also burning stars, to meet another body of desire, to make greater light and heat, to enter each other's mystery. And speaking of that show, I'm hoping after the pandemic recedes that I can come back and continue on presenting that around the country. Stay tuned. And also ponder, on the heels of that, if you will, how some people you once knew well, or some place, or something, can become unknown, can become foreign. And how at once strange, how mystifying and unsettling this can be, and yet somehow we're able to accept it, or sometimes we can. This is called Hello Stranger. Came to me on a walk years back. Shadow dancer in my thoughts, on this path, round these reservoired waters, where we walked hand in hand, heart in heart, through seasons of light, delight, all life's weather, until you, my once beloved lover, became a stranger, disappeared into odd corners of yourself, your old or some other far removed world, leaving only faint traces of our times, like these remembered footsteps, the outlines of a now so strangely missing caring, so strangely relinquished kinship. Well, musing on the value and the virtue of sometime not knowing, from the Marginalian is artist Anne Hamilton on art, the creative value of unproductive time, and the power of not knowing especially. It's from her essay, Making Not Knowing. It's adapted from her 2005 commencement address at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. One doesn't arrive, she said, in words or in art, but by necessarily knowing where one is going. In every work of art, something appears that does not previously exist, and so by default you work from what you know to what you don't know. You may set out for New York, but you may find yourself, as I did, in Ohio. You may set out to make a sculpture and find that time is your material. You You may pick up a paintbrush and find that your making is not on canvas or wood, but in relations between people. You may set out to walk across the room, but getting to what is on the other side might take 10 years. You have to be open to all possibilities and to all routes, circuitous or otherwise. But not knowing, waiting, and finding, though they may happen accidentally, aren't accidents. They involve work and research. Not knowing isn't ignorance. Not knowing is a permissive and rigorous willingness to trust, leaving knowing in suspension, trusting in possibility without result, regarding as possible all manner of response. The responsibility of the artist is the practice of recognizing. Our culture has beheld with suspicion unproductive time, things not utilitarian, and daydreaming in general, but we live in a time when it is especially challenging to articulate the importance of experiences that don't produce anything obvious, aren't easily quantifiable, resist measurement, aren't easily named, are categorically in between. Thank you to her for that, and Hamilton. Richard Rudd. The creative process is a dance along the banks of the unknown. It's an excerpt from the Venus sequence. Whenever you find yourself moving through a difficult period in your life, one of the healthiest ways of working through it is to engage in a creative project. The creative process is a dance along the banks of the unknown. Therefore, it is a natural outlet for an unknown inner process that cannot be helped by thinking or through any outer guidance. All works of genius emerge in spite of the mind, though they may be expressed through the mind. Anais Nin, on inviting the unknown, she said the unknown was my encyclopedia. It's possible I never learned the names of birds in order to discover the bird of peace, the bird of paradise, the bird of the soul, the bird of desire. It is possible I avoided learning the names of composers and their music the better to close my eyes and listen to the mystery of all music as an ocean. It may be I have not learned dates in history in order to reach the essence of timelessness. It may be I never learned geography the better to map my own routes and discover my own lands. The unknown was my compass, my encyclopedia. The unnamed was my science and progress. Thank you, Anais Nin. The physicist Sean Carroll on how poetic naturalism illuminates our human search for meaning. It's from his book, The Big Picture. Fascinating book. We don't know how the universe began, or if it's the only universe. We don't know the ultimate complete laws of physics. We don't know how life began or how consciousness arose, and we certainly haven't agreed on the best way to live in the world as good human beings. In some number of years I will be dead, so memory of my time here on earth may linger, but I won't be around to savor it. With that in mind, what kind of life is worth living? How should we balance family and career, fortune and pleasure, action and contemplation? The universe is large, and I am a tiny part of it, constructed of the same particles and forces as everything else. By itself, that tells us precisely nothing about how to answer such questions. We're going to have to be both smart and courageous as we work to get this right. The poet Rilke on our fear of the unexplainable. This was back in 1904. This is from A Year with Rilke, daily readings from the best of him. Wonderful book. The tendency of people to be fearful of those experiences they call apparitions or assigned to the, quote, spirit world, including death, has done infinite harm to life. All these things so naturally related to us have been driven away through our daily resistance to them, to the point where our capacity to sense them is atrophied. Fear of the unexplainable has not only impoverished our inner lives, but also diminished relations between people. These have been dragged, so to speak, from the river of infinite possibilities and stuck on the dry bank where nothing happens. For it is not only sluggishness that makes human relations so unspeakably monotonous, it is the aversion to any new, unforeseen experiences we are not sure we can handle. The person who has not, in a moment of firm resolve, accepted, yes, even rejoiced in, what has struck him with terror, he has never taken possession of the full, ineffable power of our existence. He withdraws to the edge. When things play out, he will be neither alive nor dead. To discover the unity of dread and bliss, these two faces of the same divinity. Indeed, They reveal themselves as a single face that presents itself differently according to the way in which we see it. That is the essential meaning. Thank you, Rilke. And the poetic physicist Alan Lightman on beginnings, endings, and what makes life worth living. How our cosmic improbability confers dignity and meaning upon our shared existence. From his book, Probable Impossibilities. What I feel and I know is that I'm here now, at this moment in the grand sweep of time. I'm not part of the void. I'm not a fluctuation in the quantum vacuum. Even though I understand that someday my atoms will be scattered in soil and in air, that I will no longer exist, I am alive now. I am feeling this moment. I can see my hand on my writing desk. I can feel the warmth of the sun through the window. And looking out, I can see a pine-needled path that goes down to the sea. 100 years from now, I'll be gone, but many of these spruce and cedars will still be here. The wind going through them will still sound like a distant waterfall. The curve of the land will be the same as it is now. The paths that I wander may still be here, although probably covered with new vegetation. The rocks and ledges on the shore will be here, including a particular ledge I'm quite fond of, shaped like the knuckled back of a large animal. Sometimes I sit on that ledge and wonder if it will remember me. Even my house might still be here, or at least the concrete posts of its footing crumbling in the salt air. But eventually, of course, even this land will shift and change and dissolve. Nothing persists in the material world. All of it changes and passes away. Thank you, Alan Lightman. Here's the very opening of Lawrence Rabb's poem, The Secret Life. I felt fit our theme. In a garden at evening, a man walks slowly among the shadowy flowers, feeling that familiar melancholy as it surrounds him, still, full of promise. Far off, a woman might be singing. Where had he heard that song before? Someone in his story, following the pathways of such a garden, might also stop to listen, and perhaps instead of sorrow, he could feel a sudden, incomprehensible happiness, as though the whole world were watching him, keeping quiet, and waiting for him to understand it. Thank you, Lawrence Rabb. Jim Harrison, Another Country. I love these raw, moist dawns with 1,000 birds you hear but can't quite see in the mist. My old alien body is a foreigner struggling to get into another country. The loon call makes me shiver. Back of the cabin, I see a book and I'm not quite sure what that is. Allow me to share with you an old Native American elder story, Lost. Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here. You must treat it as a powerful stranger. Must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen, it answers. I've made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again saying, here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a bush does is lost on you, you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. Of course, I was thinking as I thought about the unknown as the dream, our dream worlds, our dream fields. And I thought of Robert Moss, who's the great proponent of conscious dreaming and guide to conscious dreaming, who I've done some workshops with. And I went back to one of his blogs from October, actually, of this year, how dreaming gets us through, and gets us through including the seeming unknowns. In our current closed-down society, people who did not previously make much room in their lives for dreams are dreaming up a storm. Dreams always tell us more than we already know. Don't dismiss any dream or tag it as, quote, weird or trivial until you have recorded it and look carefully at what is going on there. Weirdness in dreams may be special effects your dream producers bring in to dramatize something you need to understand or act upon. Dreaming may be traveling. You make visits and you receive visitations. Your social life may be very restricted in ordinary life right now, but you can be as social as you like in your dreams. You have intuitive radar that comes fully alive in your dreams. You see things happening at a distance in time and space. You check out the possible future. In dreaming, you have access to wiser sources than those available to the daily trivial mind, to the god/goddess you can talk to the ancestors, to a greater self. Your dreams are a voice of conscience and course corrections. Your dreams are a factory of images that can help you to stay well or get well. Your body believes in images. You don't need to go to sleep in order to dream. Your most powerful dreaming may unfold in the twilight zone between sleep and awake. Active dreaming is the path of real magic. In my lexicon, true magic is what happens when we bring gifts from another world into this one. To get good at dreaming, as with anything else, requires practice, practice, practice. Thank you, Robert Moss. I have so much wonderful material. I've cut it already way back, and I may cut some more as we're going. But I was so excited that I had so many good things to share. The Divine Hour is a poem about a liminal time. This he was talking about between sleeping and waking, between the known and unknown, a portal of all kinds of discovery and possibility. The hour nigh on 3. You're invited to open your eyes from a heavenly rest, to find yourself, feel yourself farthest from your earthly matters and closest to the essence, sacredness that's a fuse inside you, that infuses and inspirits you in everything seen and unseen. Everyone you know, ever knew, will ever meet. Every place of nature life takes you. Every realm your dreams and deepest wonderings may take you from here. This divine hour, this quietly divine and divining hour. Erich Fromm said, the quest for certainty blocks the search for meaning. Uncertainty is the very condition which impels people to unfold their powers. Which brought me to the American Buddhist monk, Pema Chodron, and How to Live Beautifully with Uncertainty and Change. This is from a talk or a piece she did in 2012. As human beings, we share a tendency to scramble for certainty whenever we realize that everything around us is in flux. In difficult times, the stress of trying to find solid ground, something predictable to stand on, seems to intensify. But in truth, the very nature of our existence is forever in flux. Everything keeps changing, whether we're aware of it or not. Our discomfort arises from all of our effort to put ground under our feet, to realize our dream of constant okayness. When we resist change, it's called suffering. But when we can completely let go and not struggle against it, when we can embrace the groundlessness of our situation and relax into its dynamic quality, that's called enlightenment, or awakening to our true nature, to our fundamental goodness. Another word for this is freedom. Freedom from struggling against the fundamental ambiguity of being human. Thank you, Pema Chodron. The philosopher and astrophysicist Marcelo Gleiser's book, The Island of Knowledge. Very, very interesting. If you're intrigued with that, pulled a little bit out of it. We strive toward knowledge, always more knowledge, but we must understand that we are and will remain surrounded by mystery. It is the flirting with this mystery, the urge to go beyond the boundaries of the known, that feeds our creative impulse, that makes us want to know more. If large portions of the world remain unseen or inaccessible to us, we must consider the meaning of the word, quote, reality with great care. We must consider whether there is such a thing as an, quote, ultimate reality out there, the final substrate of all there is, and if so, whether we can ever hope to grasp it in its totality. Learning more about the world doesn't lead to a point closer to a final destination whose existence is nothing but a hopeful assumption anyway, but to more questions and mysteries. The more we know, the more exposed we are to our ignorance, and the more we know to ask. This realization should open doors, not close them, since it makes the search for knowledge an open-ended pursuit, an endless romance with the unknown. I like that. Thought you would too. Ursula Le Guin from the left hand of darkness, to learn which questions are unanswerable and not to answer them. This skill is the most needful in times of stress and darkness. Here's another poem from my experiential show of theater on paper, Behind the Curtain, The Outer Spacer. Is on an odyssey, Homerian, for the 21st century, a mission to explore the farthest reaches of his inner galaxy, for which he needs an outer spacesuit, the skin he arrived in, lives in. Wide openness, leaps of courage, and astronautical curiosity. On this vast and varied journey where he may discover the secrets and platelets of his known and unknown universe. Ones from wormholes and stars to cosmic rays and solar winds that exist and persist within him, differently inside each of his fellow earthlings, whether they venture outside in or not. I wanted to mention to you a couple of interesting books by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, the philosopher and probability scholar, and I can't, only in the interest of time, which I'm looking at, I'll just quickly tell you that it's an ongoing collection called Incerto, I-N-C-E-R-T-O, maybe it's Incerto, because I think he's continuing to add with them, but it's about tackling the very issue of how to engage with an uncertain world. And the first book was called Fooled by Randomness, about how we perceive or fail to perceive the role of chance and luck in our lives. The next is The Black Swan, about unforeseen, unexpected events that have a significant impact on our lives. And Anti-Fragile, it's especially interesting to me. It explores how to live and carry oneself in a world of uncertainty. So he proposes actual strategies to allow you to be resilient in the face of chaos and crisis and grow from these countervailing forces. Very interesting reading. So pointing that out to you. Bernhard Günther, Guenther, and his site, the veilofreality.com. Very interesting thinker. And he spoke at one point, the future is not set in stone. As the planetary energies increase more and more, people are becoming fearfully uncertain about the future, with various alternative media figureheads making all kinds of predictions. And he goes into all of those, and I won't, because you know what some of them are. We're also being tricked into the illusion of three-dimensional linear time. And he said, he's heard about all these predictions, positive and negative, for the past 20 years repeatedly. And he said there was a time I bought into some of them, getting caught up in future projections based on fear or misplaced hope. And talks about how our mind can come up with all kinds of what-if scenarios and projections, but that's linear time, and we cannot possibly foresee the future in detail, let alone map out our own unique soul purpose, the lessons we need to learn, and the talents we are here to develop as embodied individuals during this time of transition. That fear is literally an illusion rooted in the fear of death and stemming from ego identification. Danger can be real, but fear is ultimately a choice. So he said, I don't make decisions out of my head, as I once did, but rather through listening to my inner nonverbal guidance and bodily intuition more and more. There's also a deeper trust in life and the, quote, universe that I'm being taken care of and supported, a clearer sense of just being a vessel for the divine, which is doing its work through me and all of us, and to which I humbly align with to the best of my abilities. I still have days when I get stuck in my head, get disconnected or caught up in a thought loop, but it's not even close to the state of being I was in a few years back. So much is happening at the same time which we cannot possibly grasp via the mind. As things speed up, it's important to slow down, sink into your gut, into your pelvic bowl, be present to what is, and the universe, nature, and the divine will open to you in ways you cannot possibly grasp intellectually, and in ways you could have never, quote, predicted. Be first, then do, in alignment. Embrace the mystery of the unknown, and enjoy the ride. It's what you signed up for. Thank you, Bernhard Günther. So I thought of this poem as called This Bridge, as a bridge to a few more things to share This was for a summer solstice, and it came to mind as I thought of what connects us from the known into the next knowings, next discoverings. This bridge, the one we all cross, to more light. A bridge made purely of sun and earth, nowhere to be seen, only sensed. A brief but beautiful crossing worth looking out at the world from, looking at your moment in life from this bridge that spans our way to another season of fruitfulness, opens us to what's above and wide around us, without closing off all that's passing underneath, that suspends us in air like birds or clouds, anchors us in the bedrock of nature, holds us in a great balance and presence as we journey through our lengthening and shortening time. Carl Sagan said, we are bathing in mystery and confusion on many subjects, and I think that will always be our destiny. The universe will always be much richer than our ability to understand it. Poem of mine, rumbling. What are the gods rumbling about, raining and thundering about tonight? So suddenly, I take my naked body and curiosity out of bed, down the dark stairs and through the front door, into the lavender flashing air to see. Where I pause, stand, let the cool falling drops refresh my face and limbs, remove the day's sultriness, let the soles of my feet slow kiss the wet stone steps. Listen to the hidden crickets and chorus of tree frogs singing their summer songs, unstopped by the pouring. Feel the whole street fast asleep except for one upper light still burning across the way for another possible listener or wanderer. And the restless, blusterous gods astir somewhere, far beyond the star-blotting clouds. What if it's a mystery play? This life. And we must, like Holmes or Hercule, carefully, cleverly follow its clues, however false or at first or faint or far-fetched. Deduce the meaning hiding inside it all. Uncover the heart of our story, at least enough of the mystery to reveal the particular part we're each meant, cast into the world to play. Here's the mathematician Marcus de Sautoy, S-A-U-T-O-Y, on the unknown and the horizons of the knowable. What we cannot know creates the space for myth, for stories, for imagination, as much as for science. Stories are crucial in providing the material for what one day might be known. Without stories, we wouldn't have any science at all. And as I thought about all this unknowing, I keep coming back, as I do for my own life mantra, one of them of being safe in my unknowing, to David Whyte, who coined that thought or phrase from his poem, The Sea. David Whyte. The pull is so strong we will not believe the drawing tide is meant for us. I mean the gift, the sea, the place where all the rivers meet. Easy to forget how the great receiving depth, untamed by what we need, needs only what will flow its way. Easy to feel so far away and the body so old it might not even stand the touch. But what would that be like, feeling the tide rise out of the numbness inside toward the place to which we go, washing over our worries of money, the illusion of being ahead, the grief of being behind, our limbs young, rising from such a depth? What would that be like, even in this century, driving toward work with the others, moving down the roads among the thousands swimming upstream, as if growing toward a rival, feeling the currents of the great desire carrying time toward tomorrow? Tomorrow seen today, for itself, the sea where all rivers meet, unbound, unbroken for 1,000 miles, the surface of a great silence, the movement of a moment left completely to itself, to find ourselves adrift, safe in our unknowing, our very own, our great tide, our great receiving, our wordless, fiery, unspoken, hardly remembered gift of true longing. Thank you, David Whyte. Annika Harris from Conscious, A Brief Guide to the Fundamental Mystery of the Mind. We've barely begun to understand our place in the cosmos. As we continue to look out from our planet and contemplate the nature of reality, we should remember that there is a mystery right here where we stand. So maybe we're all pioneers in our own ways. You, me, we humans, we sentient, insatiably curious beings. Pioneer. You who braves crossing to a new frontier, through all the unknowns and unknowables. You who's ready to risk your life for your dreams. You who believe in a more promising, flourishing place where your heart can run free. You, venturer, pathfinder, hinterlander. Immersed is the idea, is the way. Immersing yourself in the sacred heart of everything, from the world of nature to the lives of people you know and love, letting the waters of mystery and beauty flow, head to toe, heart to mind, through you, fill and freshen you, being part of a greater flow, a deeper source, always there, always a blessing. Before there's light, there's only shadow, intangible form, shapes and silhouettes, lines and outlines, only traces, intimations, suspensions of things, an intriguing there but not all there-ness, until the light of day fills in the picture, fills out the substance, dispels the nightshade, the noir, the elusive and illusory, pauses the shadow plays for another day. The edge of everywhere, where we all really live, each waking and dreaming hour, though few see or feel the edginess, the tenuousness and the expansiveness, the possibility of a last breath between life and death, or some profound encounter with wonder, where everywhere is every here for the asking, experiencing. No need to look further than the ground you stand on, the boundless lifescape you're already sensing, venturing, adventuring through. And last for now, crossing. You, like this or another figure, reconfigure yourself as you cross each new frontier of self. Leave each old veneer of self, whether in light or shadow, through forests, seas, or deserts, whether you're young and callow or older and mellow. It's these crossings, crossroads we come to, move through, that offer us pauses for deeper reflection, create points of great inflection, expansion. So we might emerge on the other side, another side, reformed, refined, or newly revealed to ourselves and to the world. Thank you again for leaning in, floating and feeling in, venturing in from everywhere you're listening across the world. If you're moved to send a note with a question or comment, I'd love to hear from you. Colin@thepoetorialist.com. This poetosphere I've created and cultivated and ever evolved is here to serve everyone genuinely interested. If you appreciated the show and want to express your thanks with a donation or support my larger poetic arts, I'd greatly welcome any contribution, which you can make by PayPal or Venmo or directly through my site, thepoetorialist.com, or simply by mail to me at P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island 02891. If you're a patron who'd like to explore hosting me for a given time on part of your own or another property as a private working poet in residence to bring forth a new body of poetic art and dedicate it in turn to you, please reach out to discuss the possibilities. I also and always seek fellow artists to collaborate with on projects musical to graphical to literary and theatrical. Meanwhile, you can hear all my broadcasts online on YouTube as replays, and soon all past and new shows on Spotify and Anchor.fm and elsewhere. I hope you'll lean in again next week, or soon again. Till then, dear listeners, here's to entering and living the greater mysteries, making peace with life's uncertainties, being safe in your unknowing, courageously exploring the unexplored, inside and around you. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.